Welcome back to another how-to video. This is my newest series where at least once a month I make a how-to video, helping you guys try to navigate this hobby like a pro, so that way you guys are not wasting any money. That is my number one goal here, is to try to help you guys save some money and grow your guys' collection. Now, today's video, we're going to be talking about graded cards, and this is not going to be a video about, how to submit your cards to PSA. There's thousands of those. We're going to be talking about which cards to grade, what to look for, all the different grading companies. So we're going to try to cover everything today. And we are going to do a little giveaway. All you have to do is make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell, leave a like, and then I want you to comment your favorite card from the new Mega Evolution set. We got some nice illustration rares right here. And I do have to announce the winner from last week's giveaway. And the winner is at GoGoAGoat. So just shoot me an email or hit me up on Instagram. I'll get those cards sent out to you. And we do have to give a big thanks to our video sponsor real quick, and that is Collectr. This app is the best of the best when it comes to tracking your collection. No other app even compares. They have over 25 different TCGs with 1.5 million products tracked. And they're always trying to improve. So let us know down below if there's anything they can add or, work on to make the app better for you guys. And I will screenshot it and I'll get it sent over to them ASAP. They also do more giveaways than anybody in this entire hobby. So make sure you follow them on all their socials so you do not miss out. And hopefully you guys can get some free boxes. So definitely check them out. All the links are in the description. But all right, let's get into it. So I feel like the biggest mistake people make when they get into the hobby is they want to get everything graded. The amount of PSA cards that I have seen of basic ultra rare V cards and EX cards, even holo cards. Like I'm talking from Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet. I have seen people get those cards graded, which honestly blows my mind. Now, if it's of a super important card to you or something nostalgic or something you really love and it's for your personal collection, totally different story. But if you're just trying to get a bunch of cards graded to get value, I would definitely stay away from that. I mean, take this Hatterene V here. It's got a PSA 9. They want $20 shipped. This card's going to take forever to sell, and the only person who's going to buy it is if, they're new to the hobby and they see a $15 graded card and they're like, oh, cool. And they just want to get a graded card, or if they collect the Pokemon. So just try to be picky. Even full art sometimes take a long time to sell, especially if it's of a random Pokemon. So maybe stick to your more popular Pokemon. You have a much better chance. And even some of the illustration rares can take a while to sell in a PSA 10, especially if it's not of a super popular Pokemon or if it's not from a super popular set. There's not that many people doing master sets of all PSA 10 cards. And then otherwise you got to find someone, a fan of that specific Pokemon or that art maybe. So those can also take a while. And then also, if money is tight and you are on a budget, that's when you should definitely be picky. Really pick the most popular Pokemon and Pokemon cards and just try to be smart with it, because a lot of people do not think about what to do with their cards after they get them back, and they end up sitting on a bunch of cards they might not like. And then when they go to sell them, someone's going to try to give them 70% or even less if it's lower end PSA 10 and PSA 9 cards. And a lot of them won't even buy the PSA 9 cards, so you'll have to crack them out of the slab. So it definitely gets annoying for sure. All right, now let's start talking about the quality of Pokemon cards, which honestly is the biggest thing here. So if you're talking about Japanese Pokemon cards, the quality is so good, which is why a PSA 10 and raw doesn't have that big of a price difference for most cards. But for English, our quality sucks, which actually makes our PSA 10 cards worth a lot more. Now, I feel like one of the best things you can do if you guys want to start grading is look at a bunch of PSA 10 cards. When you guys go to these card shows and card shops, look at a 10, look at the quality of the card. Now, PSA has definitely gotten more strict, but you can literally go on eBay and just click on a bunch of cards, and you'll eventually find a PSA 10 with a little nick in it or something like this Growlithe right here. This was a scan, and you can see in the top right, whitening right there. So what I usually try to do is, if the centering is perfect and there's just one little spot, I feel like it has a pretty good chance. Or if the centering is a little off, but it's pretty clean, like you can't really find any nicks or anything like that or any whitening, then I'm also send it in. So that's what I try to do. Now, if we're talking about cards that are like really big payoffs and super tough to grade, then maybe I'll send a couple more in that have like a couple more white spots or something like that. That's when I'm like, all right, maybe I'll just try with these, because you never know. Especially with PSA, if your grader's crabby that day, you could be getting some rough grades. You really don't know. And if he's in a good mood, he could be giving everybody 10s. I've seen some terrible PSA 10s. I've seen some terrible CGC 10s. I've seen some terrible Tag 10s. I've seen some terrible Beckett 10s. I've even seen specs on a black label before. So yeah, none of the grading companies are perfect, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. But yeah, all you can do is just make sure you picked high quality cards, of popular Pokemon, especially if you're on a budget. You want to be as picky as possible. I'm going to say picky 50 times in this video probably. And then two, A lot of people like to clean their cards off, which, you know, isn't a terrible idea. And then if we're talking vintage, that's a whole different ball game. And, you know, for modern, a PSA 9 is not good. PSA 8 is really, really bad. But for vintage, an 8 and a 9, depending on what card it is actually very, very good and can be worth a ton of money. So when it comes to vintage, you really have to think about the people that are collecting it. Now, I'm going to say half of them, you know, actually want to collect the slabs, and the other half just want to get the card and crack it out of the slab and put it in their binder, which is why, you know, a 6, a 7, maybe even a 5 for a super high value card sells a ton. You know, sometimes it even sells more than the 8s, 9s, and 10s because they're so much more affordable, you know, and it's just more accessible for everybody to get. Now, one of the big topics on grading cards is like restoring your cards and fixing dents and stuff, and like using these chemicals and all this stuff to make the hollows look better. I personally haven't really gotten into that too much. I mean, I've flattened a couple cards here and there that get super curved and like have maybe a little bend or something like that you try to flatten out just to make it look a little better. But some people go all out with that. Again, I really haven't gotten into it too much. So if you guys do want to do that, you got to do the research and figure that out. And one thing which I have not tried yet, but I've seen a ton of people do it now, is they use ChatGPT. They take really good pictures of the cards and then they ask ChatGPT to grade it using like PSA 10 standards and stuff like that. And I haven't really seen too many people like, you know, test a bunch of cards and then get them graded and then they get back so we can compare. But I've seen a lot of people do it, and, you know, you ask them to be as thorough as possible and they find the little spots. Like, it's pretty good. Let me know down below if anybody has tried that and how accurate it is. You know, I'm sure it'll just get better and better, to be honest. They also make a little centering tool to kind of figure out if your card is too off-center to send in. You know, that would definitely help a lot of the newer people in the hobby. And do not forget to start checking out some of these PSA 10 cards up close and seeing the quality of the card inside, because I promise you, you'll pick up a lot of PSA 10s and you'll see something wrong with it. I even have a buddy who goes around and he tries to find the cleanest PSA 10 cards, which honestly is super smart, and you guys should all be doing this too, because let's say in the future PSA 10 isn't the king anymore, and there's another grading company that is top dog. And you got one person who just bought random PSA 10s and never looked at the cards, and you got another person who hunted for the cleanest PSA 10 cards possible. Now, if you guys ever want to crack your cards and get them regraded with the new grading company that's way better and way bigger and worth a lot more, the person who is picky, you know, there's picky again, they're going to have a way better chance of getting a lot of 10s, especially if the grading is going to get tougher and tougher, and, you know, using AI and doing everything like that. And one more thing that I see a lot of people do is they will send a card in and they'll be like, it was super clean, it just had like the tiniest little dent. Dents and bends are not good. You know, they will grade those pretty harshly, usually like a 6 or something, or a 7. You know, it's pretty rough. And then another thing that I see a lot of people do, which I've done a couple times, is get cards regraded. Now, if you have the money and you're not on a super strict budget, you could technically just keep sending cards in and eventually you might get a 10. You know, I've seen a lot of people do that where, you know, it took a while, and I usually don't see them calculate all the money that they spent grading versus how much that they eventually get for the 10 and stuff like that, to where sometimes it's not financially the smartest thing to do. The first time I did it, it was about 14 PSA 9 cards, and I got one PSA 10 card back and the rest all got 9s again. And it was one of the cheapest cards. So that kind of sucked. I definitely lost out on that just for the cost of getting all the cards graded. But again, you can definitely try it, especially if you think it's super clean and they messed up. And now that's going to bring us into the different grading companies. We all know PSA is the king right now. They sell the most, you know, people collect them the most, and they've been collecting them for a very long time. That's why it's so hard for like a newer company to come in and take over, because people have millions and millions and millions of dollars in PSA cards already. So it's going to be really tough to get them to switch over to these newer grading companies. And I will admit it, I think Tag has the cleanest slabs right now, except that they're just kind of brittle and they break kind of easy, and they're still a newer grading company. And if they start getting those grading pods where you can grade your card in just a couple minutes right there in person, that would be honestly nuts. So you never know what these grading companies are going to do. I mean, it's just so tough though for a new company to take over, because PSA has been here for so long, and you know, they're just kind of the standard. Now CGC, I was liking CGC when they first started. I'm a really big comic book guy fan. Also, I have hundreds of graded comic books, and they're all graded by CGC because they were the standard for getting your comics graded. But they have been messing up a lot lately, and they have been grading a ton of fake cards. So I would honestly try to stay away from them. And then also I vend a ton and go to card shows all the time. Vendors do not want CGC cards. The only way I really see people pick up CGC cards is if it's a super popular Pokemon card or something like that. So at the moment, I would probably stay away from CGC if you can. All right, now let's talk about Beckett. So if you guys are thinking about sending cards into Beckett, I strongly suggest you only send your cleanest cards. Like cards that look perfectly centered and you can't see anything wrong at all. Like not one speck, no whitening. I'm talking perfect. Those would be the cards that I would send to Beckett. Try to chase that black label. I know a lot of people say it's impossible, but I mean, there's black labels out there for English. Japanese, it's much easier. But they also have the Gold 10, which a ton of people collect too, which I feel like is a lot more accepted over the CGC Black 10 that we have now. And I just wish Beckett would really like redesign their website and maybe update their slabs a little bit and, you know, come back strong, because I love how like picky they are when it comes to actually grading their cards. You know, there are people that will send in hundreds and hundreds of PSA 10 cards trying to get one black label, and, you know, they'd be super lucky to just get one. Even like King Pokemon Gary or whatever his name is, he sent in all his Charizards, didn't get any black labels. So like I said, if you're going to send a Beckett and chase that black label, definitely only send your absolute best cards. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a bunch of 9s and 9.5s. Like, it's going to be rough. And sometimes it can take a while to get your cards back. And then we're going to run through some prices right here. So we got the Umbreon VMAX, most popular card pretty much. $2,800 in a PSA 10. We got one at $3,000, $2,900, $2,900. And then we got Tag. Last sold $2,300, $2,500, $2,500. I think they also do have a Pristine, which these are all gem mints. So they technically have one that is better. And next we have CGC. So here's the basic 10, $2,300, $2,500 best offer accepted. And then we do have a Pristine 10 here at $2,900 and an older Pristine 10 at $2,800. Then we have Beckett. So here's the gold label 10. This sold for $3,450. $3,700, $3,100, $3,700. But if we go down, we do have a black label sale down here, $13,501. So one thing I like to think about is, imagine all the people that were too scared to send their cards to Beckett because they just wanted to for sure get that 10 that could have possibly have gotten the black label. Like, I wonder how many black labels are sitting in a PSA 10 case right now, missing out on so much value. You know, it's not like there's tens of thousands of them, but I bet there's a good little handful of cards out there that are super clean, that are sitting in a different grading company's case that are just missing out on a ton. And then if we're talking UK, they have ace grading, which, I mean, if you're in the UK and this is your best option, I mean, it's not terrible. I think some of the pictures that they use for the slabs, I think they kind of do it to match the cards. I think it looks pretty solid, but last sold $2,400 and $2,300. And one of the last things we're going to be talking about is first to market. So when a new set comes out, if you have one of the first PSA 10 cards on the market, you get a crazy premium because there's always some crazy person who buys it and they just don't care about money. I have no idea why they're buying it, but it happens every single set. Now, if you do not do express grading, it could be 3-4 months before you get your cards back, and that, you know, $2,000 Pikachu card could now be worth $800. So you really have to think about how long it takes to get your cards back. Also, what if the market cools off in 3 to 4 months? Or sometimes it takes even longer. And then you also think about like the entire market, you know, not just talking about newer cards. Let's say if it's a card that's been out for a while, like the Umbreon VMAX or something, and the market really cools off and you get your cards back, and, you know, now this Umbreon that's selling for $2,800 is now selling for $2,000. And so is your Rayquaza and the Gengar and all these other older cards, which, I mean, Sword and Shield isn't old, but old compared to Scarlet and Violet. So you really have to think about that and prepare for that, because that does happen sometimes and it does suck. You know, getting that card back and you're so excited and the price is just cut in half from when you sent the card out. Which is why, like, if Tag does do those grading pods and you get your card graded in 5 minutes, I mean, that'd be pretty crazy, and I think that'd be super popular, but let's see if that ever happens. I haven't seen one yet. So yeah, if you do get a super nice card, like I'm talking one of the best cards in the entire set, you know, on the first day when the set comes out and it is minty, like you are 100% sure this thing's going to get a PSA 10, you could definitely send that card off for express grading and get it back right away, and then have one of the first on the market and sell it. But you got to be okay with selling it, because if you express grade it and you spend all that money and you get it back and then you don't sell it, you just wasted all that money on getting your card express graded, and the card's just going to keep going down in price. Because even when cards do come out and then they kind of spike for their raw, the PSA tends to slowly fall because we're just getting more and more and more of them on the market. And the last thing that I'm going to mention is I see a ton of people get a bunch of graded cards and they don't put them in the graded card sleeves. They kind of look like team bags and their slabs get all scratched up. People do not want scratched up slabs and they take a long time to sell. So please, if you guys have a bunch of graded cards, put them in, graded guards if you want, which try not to spend a lot of money on those either. But you can just get the little clear bags, just like team bags, and they slip right on there perfectly and they look super nice and they keep your slabs nice and clear. And if there's anything that I missed, please put it down below so when people watch this video in the future, 6 months, a year from now, they can come to the comments and find out more tips and tricks to help you guys save money and make some smart plays and get a ton of PSA 10s or Beckett 10s or CGC 10s or whatever it is. But all right, I hope you guys liked this video. Make sure you guys subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave a like, and comment your favorite card from Mega Evolution to be entered into that giveaway. If you guys want to support more, you can check out my Instagram, my TikTok, or my YouTube membership. It's only 99 cents a month. But all right, I want you guys to have a great day. If you want to watch my last Pokemon Falling Friday, which was a super good one, click this video here. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.